Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the Cryptoverse. Today, we're going to talk about Bitcoin, but specifically, we're going to be discussing the Bitcoin dominance, something we talked about extensively this year, and we will continue to provide updates on it. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and check out Into the Cryptoverse Premium at intothecryptoverse.com. Let's go ahead and jump in. So the last time we made a video here on specifically the Bitcoin dominance was back in August 3rd. And one of the things we noted back then was that if history is any indication, we usually see an inflection in the Bitcoin dominance in September. Okay? These yellow lines on this chart here show September of a lot of the prior years. And you can see that whatever way the dominance is headed going into September, by the end of it, it's usually going back the other way. So if the dominance is going down, it then starts going up as you go into Q4. But if it's going up, it starts to go back down as you go into Q4. It all depends on which way the momentum is heading into the month of September, and it usually sees some type of reversal. We also discussed the idea that with the ETH merge, it makes sense that the dominance would continue to go down in the short term, sort of like what I drew here, but ultimately pick back up as we get into September and as we head into the fourth quarter of the year. So going back to the Bitcoin dominance, I mean it's seen a pretty massive pullback from this upper range up here, 48% or so. We did technically put in a new low, right? We did technically put in a new low, which honestly surprised me, right? I mean, there's no way to get around that. I was not expecting it to go all the way down that low. But at the end of the day, I do think the dominance still has much higher to ultimately climb. And one of the interesting things, and we're gonna look at a few different comparisons here. One of the interesting things is that, again, looking at this without stable coins, because it's one thing to look at it with stable coins, and it's another thing to look at it without stable coins. If you look at a lot of altcoins, they're down. Most of them are down massively against Bitcoin this year. Now a lot of them have had bounces off of their local lows in June, but a lot of them are down quite significantly against Bitcoin over the course of the year. If you go look at, say, like AVAX Bitcoin or Solana Bitcoin or ADA Bitcoin, there are a few that are doing relatively okay, like BNB Bitcoin or Ether Bitcoin, but most of them are significantly down from January. And what's interesting is that this is more so reflected in the dominance where you exclude stablecoins. So if you do that, you can see that the Bitcoin dominance has been putting in higher lows for basically since May of 2021. We've just been putting in higher lows. And currently the dominance when you exclude stablecoins is actually sitting at 46% rather than 40%, which is what it is when you include stablecoins. So that is something to keep in mind. Now, one interesting thing about this chart is if you draw a couple trend lines on it, okay? So I took the liberty of doing that, and I wanted to show you what they look like. If you take this chart and just sort of connect the dots, you can see that the dominance, even going all the way back to, say, 2018, is putting in higher lows. Even this most recent low, it's still putting in, as long as this holds, of course, it's still putting in higher lows. But what's equally interesting is that the dominance, when not including stablecoins, is also putting in lower highs, right? So lower high, lower high, lower high, and then we got a few more, but we're also putting in higher lows. So this is converging to some point a few years from now. So that'll be an interesting point to see what happens. Which way does it break? Does it break to the upside? Does it break to the downside? I do think, honestly, and I think some people might be surprised to hear me say this, I am a bull on the Bitcoin dominance over the short to medium term, but I think over the long term it is in a macro downtrend, right? I mean, I do. So I'd say ultimately, fast forward, let's say like 3 or 4 years when these lines potentially converge, I would argue that the dominance is more likely to break down at that point than up. I just think that in the short to medium term, it's much more likely to break up than down. Okay, so I want to be clear about that. And if you look at the dominance, not including stablecoins, I mean, you can see that it could easily break up past 60%. If you include stablecoins, I don't know that it's going to go all the way back to 65, 67%. Like it might when you don't include it. but it still could go up quite a bit. And going over to the Bitcoin dominance, one of the things I want to draw your attention to is plotting it with the Ethereum dominance. Okay, so and I've drawn the attention to this move several times. There is a very similar move here in the Ethereum dominance in 2018, where we sort of went back up and we made a nice little move that ultimately got rejected and we came back down. And it corresponded with the Bitcoin dominance sort of going back down. What's interesting is that the dominance of Bitcoin back then in 2018 went to the exact same level that it just went to a couple days ago. The Ethereum dominance this time, however, went very slightly higher, and we're actually still, sitting up just above this, right? So I find this interesting. I mean, again, history does not have to repeat itself identically, but there are certainly a lot of similarities between sort of this move over here by the Ethereum dominance in 2018, sort of the back test of the Bitcoin dominance to about 40% or so, 39 to 40%, while the Ethereum dominance went to 20 to 21%. We're seeing the exact same move, potentially yet again. The reason why all this is so important or interesting is because it's all culminating with the merge this week, the ETH merge this week. And there are no sure things in this market. There's a chance that it breaks differently, right? It maybe the Ethereum dominance breaks up and it goes much higher. But history would show us that there is certainly a much stronger risk, I think, of it actually ultimately breaking back down for a while. And I think it's important for us to at least consider that this could be a likely outcome as we sort of press forward into the coming weeks and the coming months, that there is a distinct chance that this is just sort of like a secondary distribution phase, right? A secondary distribution phase for Ether, especially on, say, like its Bitcoin pair, okay? And we saw the same thing with Bitcoin USD back in 2021, where we sort of had like the Wyckoff for a while, and then we sort of had a secondary distribution phase later on. We saw that with Bitcoin USD over here in 2021. So I just wanted to sort of talk about the Bitcoin dominance again. It hasn't gone how I thought it would go over the last few months, but if this is sort of a sign of things to come, then perhaps we'll ultimately get to where I think we're going, even if it took a few extra months to get there. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. We'll see what happens this week with the ETH merge and how the Ether Bitcoin valuation reacts to that, and if it's a sell the news event or if it goes the other way. But it certainly will be something that I think we're going to watch quite closely, and we'll see how everything unfolds here over the next several weeks. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed. Give the video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.